Hi guys, I'm Matt from Vagabond Recordings.
And I'm Greg from Suburban Sound Development.
It's time for
Gear time
with Greg.
Greg.
As you can see, we're in a little bit of a different format today.
Yeah.
That's for various reasons. None of it applies to you.
Don't worry about it. It's like this moment never happened.
Except you're watching it, so it did.
Oh well.
We defeated ourselves pretty quick on that one.
Damn.
Anyway, and this is one of our first installments of something we're going to call Beginner Gear Talk. It's where we try to guide you guys through maybe your building your first setup, or you're not really sure what to do with some of the technical stuff that gets kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
Especially if you walk into a guitar store.
Well, because if you start off with your $100, $200 starter pack, and you get your amp, you get your cable, you get your guitar, it's all there for you. You just plug it in. But when you have to worry about adding pedals or different heads and cabinets, things start to get a little more complicated.
Yeah, so we're going to try and make a series to kind of clear things up, because when you go from the bedroom to a jam space, possibly to the stage, there's a lot of questions a lot of people have, and we'll try to guide you through it. Today we're talking about impedances, though, and how that relates more or less to heads and cabinets. So when you're getting ready to get that gig, or you're looking to up your volume into a jam space, you're probably going to look at a head and a cabinet. And there's a lot of debate on forums about what's good for impedances, about matching and 16 ohm and 4 ohm, and
Right.
we're just going to try and clear it up a little bit.
Yeah, so every amp is different. Well, not every, but most amps are different. Typically, you're going to either have a 4, 8, or 16 ohm load. There are exceptions like higher powered bass amps that'll go down to 2 ohms, older guitar amps that'll take up to 32 ohms, but more often than not, 8 I think is probably the most common, whether it be mono or stereo, and we'll get to that in a bit.
So we're looking at 4, 8, and 16 generally.
Yes.
So we'll just kind of talk through how that works and what is acceptable to use.
Yeah. Basically, 8 ohms is kind of ideal because in the realm of ohm ratings and resistances, it's kind of the middle ground. So like from 8 ohms, it's safe. Depending on your manufacturer and their warranty and their specifications may say otherwise. Read the back of everything. I'm not telling you this is all fact, like you can just go plug this into this and it's going to work every time. But as a generic rule of thumb, you can typically step up to from 8 ohms to 16, or down from 8 ohms to 4 without any real issue.
Yeah, that's kind of what I understood is one step up, one step down typically is safe.
Yeah. It might not be, again, manufacturer recommended, but it's most likely not going to blow out a transformer or catch fire or anything cool or crazy like that. What may happen is you might either lose some top end or bottom end, depending on what mismatch you're looking at, because more or less the point of the ohm rating is what the designer of the circuit intended for the circuit to see. So if you're changing that, you're either attenuating your highs or your lows. So you're going to lose something, but whether or not that's a good or a bad thing is your choice. There are some players who will specifically take a 4 ohm head and run it into an 8 ohm cab because it does this, or the other way around.
Right, and that's not to say anything about matching the RMS from your head to your cab. That'll be a different video.
Right. We'll cover wattage and stuff at some other time.
Yeah, so I don't know where I was going with that.
Cut.
I don't think I had anywhere else to go with that. But
So, like, some basic no-nos would be you have a base head, let's say, that, you know, either needs 4 or 2 ohms, and you want to run it into your 16 ohm cab. Don't recommend that at any point. Even if you run low volumes, I'm not going to say that's going to work. It might work, like, you'll get noise, but it's going to mismatch something. And more often than not, with a higher load, basically you're putting too much resistance on the power section of the amplifier. So if you take that hypothetical situation of your 2 ohm head into a 16 ohm cab, you are really overworking your output transformer on the amp. So that's when you're going to run into failure more often than not. If you do it the other way around, you're more likely to damage your speakers.
yeah, the way I understand it, and this might be a little oversimplified, is if you think about ohmage as friction, right? If your cab has more friction than your head, so you have a 4 ohm head and you're going into a 16 ohm cab, the cab has a lot more friction, so it'll slow down that signal enough that it kind of backlogs the signal.
Right.
Oversimplified. But it'll come back and affect your output of your head, and that's where you can see damage.
Well, you're trying to funnel too much into too little, more or less.
So, an easy way to look at this, and it's not 100% scientific. Imagine you have a water bottle and you're pouring it into a cup. Now, that's coming out at the same rate, and it's going into just
the appropriate receptacle. No.
Yeah, which would be your cab.
Yeah.
So if that's flowing properly, it's just going to go straight in, and it's going to be outputted. Now, say if you want to run from a 4 ohm head to an 8 ohm cab, we throw a paper towel over top of that cup, one paper towel, and then you pour the water in. It'll still make it through, and it'll still be fine, but there'll be a little backup, a little bit of water sitting on top. But if you try and go from that same 4 ohm into a 16 ohm, imagine you put 2 or 3 paper towels over that cup, and then you're going to see the water really start to mound up, and that's where you find problems, is if there's way too much of the mounding up of the water. And that's just for the head going into the cab. The other direction,
it'd be more like the funnel, like coming back out of the cup, trying to put it into the bottle.
Right.
Same kind of concept, but reversed.
Yeah, so hopefully, the illustration, hopefully that makes it simplified. Again, not overly specific or technical or 100% always the case. This is just the mass majority of real life situations you might see.
All right, so here's the typical OR15 that you'll see in a lot of our videos. This is my little go-to. Yeah, can't say enough good things about these. Check them out. But
I don't think Orange needs any more endorsement.
No. Go find some little boutique builder. That's the cool thing. Sorry, Orange. Take it all back.
13 watts.
Yeah, 13. God, that'll be a whole nother video. All right, so basically, I have this guy. Typically on an Orange, I'm just going to use that for an example because this fits in my lap nicely. You'll have your two, like either your stereo outputs or your mono output. And your stereo are 8 ohms and your mono is 16. The reason being is because if you want to run into either a cab that runs stereo 8 ohms, then you're getting your 16 ohm load with this thing, or you can run mono into your 16 ohm and just one plug. You can run this into 2 separate 8 ohm cabs with your stereos, or because the way these things are wired, you can run one 8 ohm cab into your one stereo output, because it's still only seeing half the 16 load, so it processes that. That's typically what I do. I more often than not have my cabs wired for 8 ohms because, as we mentioned earlier, it's good for stepping up or down. So if you were playing a show out and needed like cab share, there doesn't really have to be like some big warning of like, oh, my cab's 4 ohms, don't use it. You know, it's a little more user friendly. Basically, series and parallel, two very different things. Parallel, you are adding your collective values together, and series, you're dividing your collective values. So if you have, we're just stacking dogs.
This is gonna be the part of the video that gets the most likes.
Yeah.
There's just puppies everywhere.
Ellie's not having
Okay,
it.
you all have to get down now.
All right, so basically we have the Ampeg empty 2x12 cabinet, and it's got two 8-ohm speakers in it. I currently have them wired up as individually as they get, so I can just run one speaker or both. And basically what we're going to do here is I'll show you how to link and understand like how to get different readings. So flip to the multimeter. I have it on the 200 range because that's 200 and less that it'll pick up.
I think that's also the lowest that one goes.
Yeah.
I think I have the exact same one.
It's practical. I had a really nice one and then just stopped working, and I'm not going to pay that money again.
No.
So, on this, positive and negative don't actually matter because there's no real current going through it in the form of like AC/DC type current. But so to get your positive, negative, test on one terminal. This speaker tests at 7.1 ohms. That's the other thing too about manufacturers. They just always kind of round it to the nearest, like they're not going to tell you it's a 6.9 ohm speaker. Like they're just going to call it your 8 ohm. Now, if you get too far out of that range, then you want to be kind of careful with what you're doing, I suppose. But at any rate, our other speaker, if I can get on the correct terminal, is 7.10. 7.10. So about the same reading on each. 6.9, almost 7, because it keeps fluctuating. This voltmeter doesn't go any more accurate at that low of a setting. So more or less, each are 7 ohms, but that's next best thing to 8. They're going to just call them 8 ohm speakers. What I'm going to essentially do here is bridge these two, because then you're attaching the positive and negatives. Again, this is just a little coupler for pedals. But I'm going to use it in my jack since we're not actually hooking it up to anything. Typically I will use an ABY box or just plug it in stereo or whatever. So now the positives and negatives are coinciding. So I will just test one jack. And because now we're getting closer to a 4 ohm reading. So that cuts it down. Now
much to your surprise, I'm cashing in all my bad luck. Shy away from prying eyes.
dun dun dun.
Oh. I mean, 14, that's
Yeah,
weird.
Well, because they were
but-
7.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's how you do that. That is,
More or less the 16 we're looking for.
yeah.
It's closer to 16 than it is 8. We are now supplied with our generic coffee cups.
Yeah, because we're not sponsored by anybody, but we could be. Please sponsor us.
Coffee shop.
Oh, yeah. Maybe we should check into that. All right, anyway, we're diverging. Okay, so parallel and series wiring as far as speaker cabinets go. basically the benefits of parallel are you can hook different cabs up, multiples at the same time. Series, the only way to do that is through daisy chaining, like I think I mentioned earlier. And more or less, you can, with certain cabs, not all cabs can do this. Some cabs, I know Randall is a typical provider of this feature. It has an in and an out, similar to like some PA monitors do, so you can hook multiples together, where if you run a speaker cable out of your mono output of your amp head and into your first cab, the in, there's a second jack provided on the cabinet that you can run it out to a second cabinet. And so then they're hooked in series, and that cuts the load.
Yeah, so what that means for you new guys is if you get, say, a 212 now, you could get possibly another 212 later,
right,
if you wanted to have the 412 effect going on.
Yeah. Because otherwise, on the 212 front, any of you guys that want a combo for the accessibility and ease of use, or if you just like the way it sounds but end up needing more volume, or you just want it to look cooler, you can do like the 6x12 stack if your ratings are right, because more often than not combos will have stereo outs, like two output speaker jacks, and one is going to be occupied by the speakers in the combo. And let's assume you have two 16 ohm speakers wired for 8 ohms in your combo. Well, so you're looking at an 8 ohm load on one output. Well, you want a matching 8 ohm load on the other one, and you could run that to an 8 ohm 4x12 and wind up running 6 speakers. Sound a hell of a lot bigger, look cool. I mean, you have an extra cabinet to carry around, but if the application requires it, then you're set. You don't have to go out and get a whole nother head or whatever. But
possibly like a show that doesn't have a lot of sound.
Yeah, if you don't have like a backline, or if because I know some guys, like you'll play whatever, like graduation or house party. It's like you don't have like a stereo system to support you. Bring it on down. If you got floor space for it, you do have floor space because you got to set your combo down. Plus, then if you do something along those lines, you don't have to worry about getting the tilt back stand to make your combo loud or whatever.
And as a guitar player, you're the second most important person in the band.
Don't forget it. Don't forget it.
Just beneath the bass player.
Nobody cares about the singers. They're all full of themselves.
So we hope that cleared up some of the intro stuff you might be looking for as an upgrade. This isn't for people that are generally just getting into it. But if you're looking to upgrade from your little practice amp, you want a head and a cabinet or maybe a combo. These are important things to think about, and we will be providing you with more videos to clear up more questions. If you have any, leave them in the comments below, and we will do our best to make a video to address it.
Right. Yeah, because we'll directly answer your comments, questions, what have you. But if it generates enough interest from us, or if you stick us with a really good question or point out something that we missed, please do. We'll make a video on it to cover that.
All right, guys. Thanks for sticking around for this one. I hope you found it helpful. We will have more coming out in the following weeks.
Yeah. Spend gear time and stuff with coffee and Matt and dogs, but mostly coffee.
Mostly coffee. You see these? All right.